So I am here with Allie LeFevere and Lindsay Rush of Obedient Agency. And I first met them at an event they did called Laugh Lab, How to Use Fun to Grow Your Business. And I thought that it was a great message for everyone trying to inject more fun and humor into their business. And they have a really cohesive brand. And so I wanted to bring them on to talk about that. Lindsay and Allie, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having us. Hello.
So if you could tell me a little bit about, and the listeners, about Obedient Agency, like who you are, what you do, what's your superpower?
Yeah, so we are Obedient Agency. We work with brands and businesses to infuse humor and fun into their overall messaging strategy and help them message their business in a way that stands out from other folks in the industry. So and we're also doing design as well. So
we call ourselves a humor marketing agency. Loosely.
And what about your own personal entrepreneur journey? I know you guys have a background in comedy writing, maybe for bigger agencies. Can you each speak about how you got to this point?
Yeah. So I am a copywriter and comedy writer, and I ran my own copywriting shop for, I guess, almost 9 years before joining forces.
Mm-hmm.
And I slowly but surely kept realizing that my favorite type of copy to write for businesses was unconventional and fun and conversational, sort of realizing that it felt like the traditional marketing speak was dead. If I had my say, or that audiences were responding a lot better to people speaking like humans instead of sales machines. And so I was steering my sort of business ship in that direction slowly but surely. And then Allie and I had a couple of other side entrepreneurial endeavors together and kept coming back to that as the thing we enjoyed most and the thing that we thought could make a huge impact for businesses and sort of the world, I guess, if we're being, so now then since forming Obedient, we've sort of honed in on that even more as like humor and fun as our main strategies. So
yeah, and I came from a little bit different background, but so I worked at consulting firms for many years in the growth strategy world. And then I worked as a VP of a startup overseeing customer engagement. And so I was overseeing the marketing teams and the customer experience teams and really in charge of everything that touched the consumer from a messaging, voice, persona perspective. And the route we used was fun and humor, and it was just a great way to engage with people. It made them feel good, made them laugh, and it was super effective. And then we were acquired, and then I left and did my own thing I ran a business for, I think, 6 years on my own, and was working with brands and businesses to get their message and their business out into the world in a different way. And then, the kind of when we first partnered up, we've been like the best of friends for years, but we did this really funny project. I guess we can talk about it. After the election, we wanted to raise funds for an organization that was near and dear to our hearts. And we created these like really funny mugs, and just as a fun side project as friends, and they sold out and they were really popular, and the concept was still nasty. So like that, and so we did that as a side fun project together. And we're like, wow, we have had a lot of fun together. We work really well together. We believe in kind of the same ways of messaging and talking about marketing. And then that was kind of the impetus for seeing like, we could do more with this concept. And then Obedient kind of happened soon after that.
Well, it's a good lesson that when you're working on something that you're enjoying, the success will follow. That if you're really passionate about what you're doing and you believe in the work, that the followers, the money, the success will come from there versus trying to hop on a bandwagon that you don't really believe in.
Totally. I think people can tell that's such a fun side effect of Obedient is that we really have so much fun helping other people have fun. Yeah. And it is like the energy is really good around it.
And so a lot of our listeners are either have day jobs with side hustles or they are like the solopreneur. So what is it like to have a partner versus like a solopreneur with a team or being a party of one? What is it like to work with a partner?
the dream. The dream. I mean, we probably talk about it 5 to 6 times a week and get weepy over it, is that it's crazy to think that we did it on our own for so long when it feels so good to work together. I think we have a lot of overlapping skill sets and then enough different skill sets that it just makes everything we do easier. I'll speak for myself to say, I just feel supported. I feel understood. I feel like I can do more and really focus on the things I'm awesome at in relation to Lindsay. I think that it's just, I think what we do a really good job at is always highlighting when each other has done something really well and getting excited by each other's ideas and like letting all of our terrible ideas exist and be okay with it so that we can create something really fun and better for our clients. So yeah, I'm so glad that I have the experience of working on my own, because now that I have a partner that I feel really supported by, I can see how much more effective it is and can do so much more than I think really did before. Yeah.
Yeah. I when I first started finally like working for myself and my business was at its place that I could just only do that, I swore up and down I would never do anything but just work for myself, like just be me. I loved the freedom and the flexibility and answering to no one and all of these things.
Yeah.
So it's funny for me to think about how much I like working with someone when it is the right business partner.
Yeah.
Because there are all of these, for a million reasons, that to echo what Allie said, but there's all of these things that a lot of the elements of running my business that I didn't like are some of the things that she's very good at, operationally, strategically, big picture, client focused. And so it has actually allowed me to then like drive even further into the things I really love.
Yeah.
So it's opened me up versus limited me, which was a surprise for me.
Do you have any like pieces of advice or takeaways for people who are thinking of going into business with somebody else?
I just read an article and I feel like I was looking for confirmation of how we feel. As I was like, why are we good? I know why we're good business partners, but what do other people say about that? And one of the tips that I really liked that I think is really applicable is to work with this person on something sort of inconsequential, small, creative, something where the stakes are sort of low.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you turn out not to be great together, no one's losing a ton of money or nothing, like there's nothing legal's really happening. So it's like, see how you are together in these small things, because that is such a low risk way. So
yeah, that's a great idea. Cause I think it's like a lot of companies when they hire interns, right? Like, or contract employees, it's a test run. They hire them to just be on a contract, see what it's like before taking the plunge.
Totally.
Really good idea.
Yeah. I really do think that was so much part of like a recipe for success, because we were doing that fun little project I mentioned earlier. And then we have a podcast that we had done together just as a fun side project. And then we were workout partners as well. So we're together all the time, doing 100 things together. And we just meshed well. And we realized that very quickly. And so that's when we realized, we should merge businesses, invest time, resources, energy, all of that. But we already knew that it would be a smoother transition because we had already seen each other working together in different outlets. So
how long have you known each other?
6
years? Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. And Obedient Agency is how old?
About just under 2.
Yeah, just a little under 2. So it's a baby.
It's a baby.
It's still a baby. Our baby's it's so young and sweet. It's cute.
But that's the exciting part. I think that when it's first starting out and you're so open to different possibilities. So one of the things I noticed with your own messaging as an agency is that you have a super clear and consistent brand across all of your platforms, all of your messaging. And I'd love to hear just about that process of when you were first in that infancy stage of identifying what you want to do, who you want to serve, how you want to serve them, and take us through that process of creating this cohesive brand.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. Because I like hearing that. Secondly, I do think it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting balance when you're building something new to have sort of like open-handedness about allowing it to evolve and grow and change. Like we talk a lot about how like we look back at like brainstorms or documents where we're like, oh, that's so cute. We used to think that was going to be this, or that sounded so cool. So like giving it the room to breathe and grow while also being like, okay, what are the 3 things we absolutely know? And like those things have not changed. So we knew that humor, like we came up with our tagline is fun sells. Mm-hmm. So we came up with that almost.
That was like right out the gate.
Right. So that didn't change. We knew that the idea of humor marketing and creating this as a segment didn't change. Yeah. And the idea that we wanted to just anything we were going to do, we wanted to think, how could we do this in a weirder way? What is everyone else doing? Let's flip it. Or does that feel too, and sort of like coming out of jobs or projects where there was a little more traditional marketing woven in, it was a challenge to create that voice and to continue to go, this works, this worked then, but like, what would Obedient do? Like, what would Obedient say? And so we were just very cognizant of that, I think.
Yeah, we always really did take it through like a third party lens of saying like, almost like Obedient had a personality and life of its own, and what would funnel through that? Like, how would they speak about their brand? What would they create? Something else I think too, from a personal perspective for both of us, is that because we both came from running our own business and we had a lot of freedom and say over what we did on a daily basis, is when we were creating this new thing, we wanted it not only to create things that felt good for our clients, but we wanted it to continue to feel good for us too. And so that's why we would reject certain projects, or we would take on specific clients, or we would just be really upfront with our messaging or the things that we did and we didn't do, or how we thought about things and our values and our beliefs, because as we're building and creating this thing, we wanted it to sustain and have shelf life for us as well. And so it feels just as fun today as the day we conceptualized it, because I think we've stayed really true to who we are and what we are, and then really let go of what we're not. So so that's been really fun.
We joke a lot about being polarizing and alienating, and that we like those things.
Oh, great.
And so great. Being able to clearly say, this will probably, a lot of people will not get this joke, or this will maybe would be annoying to someone, but then the people that will get it will really love it. And then we will have less work weeding through like clients, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, and if you're very consistent in the types of campaigns and types of clients you're taking on, then potential clients that are similar are going to see themselves in that campaign. They're going to say, yes, I want a campaign like that, or I want to be among those clients. And you have to speak to a very specific person, because if you're trying to speak to everybody, then you're not really speaking to anyone. You're not looking anyone directly in the eye. You're just kind of speaking aimlessly to a crowd of people.
Totally.
Very cool. So so you have your Obedient agency brand, but then you also have your own personal brands. And we talk a lot here about personal branding.
Yeah.
What do you view as the role of your personal brands, and how does that integrate with Obedient?
Yeah. I mean,
good question.
Yeah. I think the common denominator, so Obedient, it is, I think what we want Obedient to be known for is smart, strategic, compelling humor, right? And marketing in a way that feels different and feels accessible and feels approachable for the clients we work with. And I think that naturally that really just resulted from how we kind of live our lives, and maybe how our personal brands were shaped individually, and why we like each other and hang out together. Is I think that that's always been a core fundamental part of who we are. I think we have a lot of respect for each other. I think we have fun. I think that we aren't just, I think, people who just have fun. I think there's a lot of like emotional depth between us. We have a lot of hard-hitting conversations and personal exploration and all of that. So I think that those are kind of things personal about us that we've kind of sustained, and they have naturally helped build Obedient, as opposed to having like a separate strategic brand outside of Obedient. I think Obedient has almost become the result of how we both lived our lives. And I don't know if you want to share more about that.
I do think from I agree with what you're saying. And I also think from a lot of our early clients were from our own respective businesses before. So that was also, there was a lot of natural overlap, which I think told us we were onto something. Like it felt like this is consistent. It's easy for certain segments of our personal brands audience to jump on board Obedient. Like we knew the ones that would almost, right? And like some of those first clients would go, oh, I'm like super on board with this. so that sort of gave us an inclination that we were onto something. But then I also do think it, for the first time for me, having to have like Lindsay Rush brand or social media presence as a founder of an agency versus just like, this is the whole shebang, has been a journey. There's just a lot more to it than I'm like, okay, what does that mean now? So it's interesting.
Yeah, it's not all like posting photos of your food and on a boat and whatever.
Truly,
to be a little bit more strategic.
Right. And then being like, oh, like what would someone who is running this thing that she's very proud of and that is growing do? We have Allie is not on social media as much as I am nearly at all.
I try to be on it. I force myself on it.
I'm tweeting jokes all the time. I'm on Instagram stories and all these things. And so we actually just had a conversation this last week of like, let's make sure, let's like take a pause, because you have to sort of shift some of those things, not in any sort of like you're hiding anything, but just like you said, so that they make sense together. So that if someone went from Obedience Instagram to mine, they would go, that checks out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Well, it's like you don't want to alienate your audience or have such a tone shift that you're like, oh, wait, that's the founder of this thing.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah.
If you're like, posting like long form sad essays about the Holocaust and then like they're like, wait, I thought we were #fun selves. I thought that's really
totally.
So I think it's more about, it's your personal brand, so you can shed light on aspects of your personality, but you can't have it alienate your audience or have it be so different in tone that it is confusing. Right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. If you get me, you're probably it's just dog photos and
I mean, they tend to perform better.
They really do.
Yeah.
Everyone loves a cute dog. That in itself could be a content strategy.
That's true. Dogs only.
I think that's my content strategy.
So let's talk about some of your, you've worked with companies like Kind and BuzzFeed and AT&T. Do you want to share one or two campaigns that you're particularly proud of?
Oh man,
we just
it's like choosing your children.
Yeah, we were just updating our like client portfolio yesterday, so be a fun one to talk about. Yeah,
I'm trying to think of like there's a few that that are like not fully out yet, but that I feel like we could say we just worked with I'm not going to say their names since their stuff's not out yet, but it's a skincare line for teen guys.
Oh yeah,
which was like fun. A very interesting challenge since we are not teenage boys and it's been a few years since we've been teens.
Yeah,
but the challenge for this brand, and they just like won. They're just sort of like blowing up, and they just won an award for one of their products.
For being like one of the top boys skincare
organic
skincare products like on the market right now, which is super cool.
But they needed to speak they needed it to be cool enough for the teen guys to want to use it. Mm-hmm. But then the people who were buying it were the moms. And so this voice and how to use fun and how to like make sure it was relevant to the guys. It was a really fun challenge. And we ended up deciding that like certain elements of the website we're written a little bit more towards the mom.
Yeah.
And then certain ones could steer, like we had to figure out and strategize like what traffic, like who was going where. Mm-hmm. Were these team guys, even if they were checking up on the brand, were they doing it online or were they doing it on social? Mm-hmm. And so then social, and wasn't this one of the questions you had in Laugh Lab about different channels and how your voice should shift?
Yes. So it was based on the platform. Unlike if, Twitter is a little bit more like pithy, witty, where like, Facebook gears a little more older, a little bit more long form, and like changing your voice slightly to each platform.
Yeah. And so we really had to do that here. Yeah. And it was fun. And another favorite of mine that we are working with she's a fertility specialist.
Yeah.
And her whole thing is educating women and men on what they can do.
Preconception.
Like before you're trying.
Yeah.
To try before you try. But we got to make a lot of very funny, like men's health.
Oh my God.
Sperm jokes.
So fun.
Because they were just all about, it was like men's hormones matter too. And so she just wanted to really have a lot of fun with it. So didn't think we'd be writing those jokes, but it was great.
But to take such a again, like a period of time where people are very stressed out, very anxious, very worried, and to use humor to talk about that subject, I would think would make people want to work with her more.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's just humanizing the whole experience. It's like calling out the elephant in the room. Like, we know this is stressful. We know this is frustrating. We know that there's a lot of misinformation out there. We know that you're hearing things from all different people in your life and society. And so it's like, how do you like take that whole experience and make it more palatable and relatable, and something that can feel really scary and overwhelming be something that is still serious, but not being so serious with it? Like, can you lighten up the experience and lighten the mood while still really honoring that this is like a really important time in people's lives? And yeah, it was a really fun project.
The header on the homepage said, "Okay, ladies, now let's get in gestation."
Yeah. Yeah.
So she was really willing to just like,
we went hard in the paint on that one.
Yeah. Cause she's like, all that, her target audience, all that they're being told is your biological clock is ticking. The only option for you is to freeze your eggs. And then they're not even sure they want children. They want the option to have them. Anyway, so it was just we were so honored that she wanted to have a lighthearted conversation about something that was serious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it seems like she's like an ideal client, because it seems like she let you kind of do what you want. What are some of the qualities when you're looking to take on a new client or a new client inquiry comes through? What are some of the either warning signs or also like the green lights that I guess I want this, that you look for?
I think that a couple of the initial like green light pieces of it is that and we hope we've done a good job of this, and thank you for saying we have a cohesive brand, is that we want people to know what they're getting when they come to us. Like, we specialize in humor and strategic fun. So if someone is just looking to have just quote unquote copy written, or just to have like an updated website, like that is not what we do. We aren't just regurgitating or editing copy. Like, we take everyone's brand through a strategic lens to find like what type of humor and tone works for you. What is your new message? What's the thesis of your brand? What's the voice you want to put out in the world? What is the vibe? Like, all of that. And so someone who understands that and is on board is awesome. I think someone who trusts us as a partner is huge. So just like, seeing like a client relationship, and like when you really can come together as like a partnership and say we both like to trust that we have their best interest in mind, and to trust that we are equally invested and excited about their brand, is I think always a great place to start from. So that I think it allows us to play more, and it allows them to just be more receptive to ideas.
Yeah. And then we also, our lead form, the first question is like, I don't know it exactly, but it's about this idea of like, are you looking for fun and humor as a strategic tool, blah, blah, blah. And if they say yes, they get to fill out the rest of it. And if it says no, the whole form ends. It just says like, thanks so much. Like, best of luck. Like, not in a jerky way, but just in a, if this isn't what you're looking for, like, let's just
but that's a really good thing to put the breaking point, the deal breakers right up front, because I know for us or for a lot of our clients, like, they're getting lots of leads and lots of incoming, but they're not all quality. And if you're able to vet some of those in the beginning, either through a quiz or through a form, then you can make sure that you're spending more time on the clients that you want and spending less time on the clients that don't really work or won't be a good fit.
Totally.
Yeah. Cause we don't want to, like, our goal isn't to convince you to work with us. We want to build trust with you and for you to be excited about what we can create on your behalf and get to know us better and just really build out that relationship. When you're trying to convince someone that like your way of doing things works, it's just a recipe for disaster, because there's always like an element of mistrust like rooted in that foundation, and they're holding back and they're hesitant, and then you're trying to extract more, it's like something more out of them, and your ideas get watered down. And so it's like, if it's not a good fit, it's okay, right? It doesn't need to be, but we want to just go wild with the people that are excited about what we're up to.
Yeah. That's really, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it like, I think for any new business or entrepreneur, solopreneur, it is tempting to just take a lot of clients because you're like, I need the money. I want to grow this. I want the experience. And there are, different schools of thoughts for that. But I think there have been moments in the early stages where we took a client that we could tell was teetering, and the experience was fine, but then we see what they did with the branding and the content, and they almost always end up either watering it down, not using it, changing words, and you're like, they weren't ready. And there's that beautiful work that is like, we won't even put it, like we can't even
just gone to die somewhere. We'll never see that again.
So
it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone, I feel like most artists and creators know the feeling of someone editing your work or someone revising it or it not being like your original intent. And that's just part of the deal is you put stuff out there and, but.
Yeah. Or when you see missed opportunities, that's what kills me. It's like if we're helping someone build their email newsletter and I was like, this is what you have to do and we can do it for you. Just give us the go ahead. And they like never do, or they just never get their opt-in up, or they never get their sign up. I'm like, oh, we could have done so much.
It's heartbreaking.
There's so many missed opportunities.
It's tragic.
I know.
I'm in the same school of thought of like, you don't want to if you take a no client on, then you have to say no to a yes client, right? Like if you take something on, and then you're going to have to say no to something down the road. So it's much better to say no to the things that you don't think will work, so you can leave yourself open for the right opportunities.
And you say no to yourself, like in your
God, I was just going to say the same thing. That's so funny.
That is actually a side effect of us working together and spending so much time together. I worry that our senses of humor are becoming one. When
entity.
We record our podcast, we often say the same joke at the same time in the same cadence, and it is frightening.
It's so weird.
We should spend time apart.
I know we should.
It's like the reverse twin thing, right? Like, twins can read each other's thoughts. It's like the reverse. You're like coming together.
Truly. We're becoming just one singular entity.
So let's talk a little bit about, for people who are wanting to bring more humor and fun into their business, into their copy, into their marketing. You did a great activity during Laugh Lab that was about turning objections on their heads and using that to your advantage. Can you speak a little bit about that activity and maybe some prompts for people to do it at home?
Yeah. So it's one of our favorite ways to just start to get like the juices flowing and the ideas going of how to like reposition a message. And so what we did in Laugh Lab is essentially we have you write down your the worst criticism you could possibly receive about your business, and then take kind of one of those pieces of criticism and essentially write back your retorts, or like, how would you clap back? What would you say in response? And the idea is like when you start to get those answers, the goal is to start to say, okay, it helps me clarify more of who I am. It helps me strengthen the message of like what I stand for and what I don't stand for. It helps you speak to your prime audience more clearly. And it helps you, I guess, like, and I don't want to say respond to your haters, but it allows you to kind of poke fun of the things maybe about the people who aren't into your brand in a very light, funny jest, to say that like, yeah, it's okay that you don't like us and here's why. And so it's like a good process to start to get like creative ideas going of like, what are some possible ways to position us so that we have a more just stronger brand identity and we can use humor to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, we jokingly call it like insult yourself. And like, I think to give a example, we are working with a superfoods company. She makes dry superfood ingredients that people can put into their smoothies to get sort of like the whole macronutrient experience. And they're like prepackaged. So like she does the packaging and like portion control for you essentially. And so one of an objection she gets is that people say, I could do this myself, like it's not. And then, so we did that exercise with her. And one of the things was like jokingly quoting, like, I could do this myself, said everyone January 1st, or said everyone for the last 3 years, And so you're telling your audience, I get that you have this objection. Like I see that that's in your head, and I want to tell you why that might not be entirely true, or why. And then you're also going, I know my business so well to know that you might be thinking this. Yeah. And I've thought that through, and I want to like talk with you about that in a funny way, or like, get you there before you're even. I think you're getting ahead of criticism in a way. Like you're addressing the things that people might be thinking or feeling, and it strips the power out of those insults or criticism. Because if you're
like one step ahead, then it doesn't sting. I always think of, I'm from Detroit. I love Eminem. And I think something I love about him, whether you like him or not, is that he's really good about predicting his criticisms, and he raps about them. And so that they no longer hold weight, or they're no longer a zing if he's already said it first. And I think that that's like such a power move, and maybe he doesn't do it in the way that everyone would, and we do it through like funny and humor and being silly and light with it. But I think it is so smart to say, why don't I just get all that stuff out of the way so that doesn't hold me back in my business, because I'm no longer concerned about receiving that criticism. I'm already aware of it and have addressed it.
Well, and making fun of yourself first, it takes the fun out of someone else making fun of you.
Yeah,
I remember when I launched the PR company, and I was, I think, it was a long time ago. It was like 24 at the time, 25. Yeah. And I remember one of the not pitches, but things I would say on the call is like, I'm not the broad. Like, I'm not the person from AbFab or from, Entourage. Who's gonna I'm not that publicist. You want that publicist that's different. And so having that idea of like painting a stereotype or a picture of what they expect and just saying, this is not me. And why that's good.
Totally. And it's so smart.
And I think that like a lot in marketing and sales, people can be very like distrustful for the right reason. No one wants to feel like they're having the wool pulled over their eyes. Like sales and marketing has a bad rap for being smarmy or trickery and all these things. And so I think humor and even that exercise of like telling it like it is and no BS lets your audience know, like, you can trust me. If I'm already telling you this, like what confidence it takes to go, here might be something negative you're thinking about my company, and here's why that's not entirely true. Like, I just think it's like
you're not
trust
hiding.
and confidence.
Yeah, true.
So do you believe in your belief, do you believe that everyone could benefit from having more humor in their marketing? Or are there people or companies that you think that's not for them?
I mean, I think everyone can pepper in some shade of humor. And I think humor, when people hear the word humor, they might think like knock knock jokes and, fart sounds. And it's not that. I can't believe I just said that. But there are so many like shades of humor and fun. There's being playful and witty and clever and snarky and sarcastic and bold and no BS. And so I think there is room for every brand to just embed a bit more of that into their kind of persona, because I think it helps you relate to a brand more. It helps you trust them more, helps you like them more, it makes you feel good while engaging with them. And really, I think every industry, there is an opportunity for some shade of it, even if it's not ha-ha slapstick humor, it could be truth-telling. It could be, calling it like it is and no BS. And yeah, so I think that everyone could benefit in some capacity.
Well, and I think a common thing we hear is like, there's nothing funny about my business, or like, there's nothing like inherently, like at first blush, there's nothing funny about this. But I think there's always something funny about the human experience, about like the way someone will use your product or why they might need it or what other things they're trying. Like there's almost always, and that's, I think, one shade of developing an inside joke with your potential consumers is so endearing, because you're telling them that you understand them.
Yeah.
I don't know. So like if your business in itself, which many businesses are not funny, but if you think about someone using your services or, like their life experience, I think you can almost always find something worth. Yeah.
Well, it's probably also the client, like the person saying like, I'm not funny, and getting
very much.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting thing to speak to, personal branding versus brand branding. That's a great, that you're like, but everyone thinks I'm not funny. You don't have to be laugh out loud funny. Like there's so many.
Yes, you can make people laugh or make people smile without being
totally
slapsticky or like
punchliney.
Totally. Exactly. When you think of something like, I think you brought it up in the workshop, the Allstate commercials with the Allstate car insurance is like the furthest thing from humorous, right? Like on its at its core, car insurance is not funny. But then when they do the, I'm the Christmas tree on the top of the car and I'm falling off and this is it's happening. I'm a teenage girl talking on the phone and texting. That it starts making you laugh, but it also paints a picture of like, oh dear God, there's teenage girls texting and they're going to hit my car and I really need to up my car insurance.
Totally.
Yeah, it's relatable.
Yeah,
absolutely. And so I would love to hear kind of thoughts about, there's the insult yourself activity. Are there other ways that you recommend to people who are kind of toying with the idea of injecting more humor into their marketing? Where do you start? What are some exercises? Humor is a muscle that you have to develop, right? So what are some ways that people can exercise that muscle?
It's a good question. I do think if you have the space to do it, I do think slight trial and error can be helpful in terms of tones. Like we sometimes have clients that aren't exactly sure what tone of humor is going to land best with their audience. And so I do think in lesser stakes situations, I think email marketing is a great place to try to do some loosey-goosey things because you're already up against people not opening their emails. Yeah. So like, what the heck do you have to do?
Exactly.
Like, I think that's a great playground to try a couple different tactics and see what people responded to best.
I was going to say, if you want, if you're just going to kind of sit with your brand on your own time too. I mean, I love that idea, Lindsay. I think that's great. It's a great medium to try. But if you just want to also just sit with your brand and start to think about your brand differently, like we'll sometimes do another exercise we call forbidden words, which is essentially just like taking a step back from your brand and going, what are all the trite, copycat, overused, redundant, boring words that are being recycled through my industry? And can you start to think, okay, if I didn't say this, what could I say instead? And that's a fun way to just get you thinking a little bit outside of the box or outside of the norm or what's expected. And we even do that too. Like when we're ideating and we're riffing and we're kind of in our brainstorm crazy sessions, we're taking a word and we're going, okay, what are the other ways you can think about that or say that? Or what does that relate to? Or what's the metaphor for that? And so it's just a fun place to start because you start to recognize like, wow, I sound exactly like everyone else. And there might be a way, even at the most basic level, to shake that up a little bit.
As soon as you said that, I was like, authenticity, no like and trust. Like I'm just like thinking about all the words. I'm like, and I probably used a bunch of them in the last newsletter. Like it's very true because I think we rest on what's already been done. We rest on what's usually being said or what the norm is. And so to turn it on its head or find a unique way will make you stand out. Very cool.
And I think we're all consumers of something, right? And so you can think of your own experience and go like, what made me feel endeared to that brand, or what made me want to buy this, or what did I like when I saw that commercial or that billboard? And then you can start to try that on in your own brand. Like, could we do that? And how could we make that our own? And what are, like Allie said, like, what are all of my competitors doing? And why might that now like fall on deaf ears to my people? Like, how can we, and I think the idea of play, we like talk about that a lot because it can be a really fun experience when you start to loosen up and have a lighthearted approach to your brand and you don't hold these things. It's hard. It's this precious thing you've built and you go, I don't want to lose a single customer. I don't want to alienate anyone. I don't want to like do the wrong thing. But I think when you can start to look at it through a lighter lens, other solutions and like genius ideas start to, that's with any sort of like art and ideas. The stronger you cling to it, the less it will grow. And so, yeah.
Cool. So for people wanting to connect with you, the best place is obedientagency.com or on your Instagram page at Obedient Agency. And then use hashtag fun sells, right?
Yeah.
Very cool. So you can see some of their other campaigns by searching hashtag fun sells. And before we wrap up, you also have you mentioned your podcast a couple times. Can you share, we have a lot of readers and book people who listen to this. Can you share what your podcast is?
Well, we should apologize in advance because we will probably ruin reading for you for the rest of your life. We have a podcast where it's called the Pot Erotica Podcast, where we read erotic Harry Potter fan fiction, and it's a comedy podcast. So we troll through fan fiction sites online. We find a story that we think is like about the right length, has some fun Harry Potter characters in it. Everyone's of age. Everyone's, you know, it looks like there's consent, etc. And then we reach out to the author. We get the author's approval, and us and there's a third host as well, our buddy Danny. We read it for the first time as we record one chapter each episode, and then we just make comedic commentary. And it started out as just a funny project. Lindsay and I, we just thought of it. We're sitting at my table here, and we thought it was a funny idea. We're like, hey, we'll do a couple episodes and we'll see if it lands. And we had no idea that, like, headed toward 2 years later, that's right, we would be where we are with this thing. I mean, it has turned into so much more than we ever anticipated. We have like these amazing diehard listeners called Pot Erotics who yes, like make us art and songs and send us gifts. And one of them created a Wikia page where they've chronicled every episode and every joke we've ever made. And, so funny. And we, you know, BuzzFeed just ranked us a top podcast to listen to this year. And it's fun to say because it was the most ridiculous, polarizing thing we could have thought of. And we're like, it's either going to land or people are going to hate our guts for it. So we'll see.
I mean, the fact that there is so much Potter erotic fan fiction out there, period, shows that there's an audience for it. Totally. I know a lot of the young adult authors we've worked with got their start in the fan fiction land. Sure. Yeah. I feel like this could be like a coffee table book, or it could be something at some point.
Right. Well, and I think it's like that. One of my favorite like lessons to extract from that, aside from really niching out and being polarizing and taking that, is like this idea that you can have a lot, like we have so much respect for these fan fiction writers because they're brilliant. And to take these existing characters and write them in new situations, and now that they're grown up, and then to add sex into it and to write about that in a way that's fresh and fun and funny, we want to celebrate them while also like having fun with them and having it be an improvised experience. And so I think that's another good lesson in that humor, like everybody can play with it. It doesn't have to be, it's not like sarcastic or mean-spirited at all. Yeah. It's a celebration in its own way.
Yeah, where they're in on the joke with us. So like a lot of the times the author is following along, and we tease the characters, not the author, as we go through the story. And it is, and it's all like there's now become inside jokes about characters that have been made up that don't even exist in the Potter series because funny stuff that's happened, and like it's just become this like weird, cool, fun community that it's great. Taken over a lot of our life.
You have to go with where the audience is, right?
Clearly. There it is.
and it goes back to what we said at the beginning. Like you were having, with Obedient, you were having fun. You were excited. It was like your passion. And now this is, and look how many downloads or followers are you up to?
Oh God. I mean, like it's
in the first year we got to a million total.
Yeah, right? I got to 1 million total, and now we're cruising along. Like day one, when an episode's released, we probably have about 15,000 that listen day one, which is wild. They were like, who the hell is listening to us talk about this? But it's just so fun. It was funny. We first launched it, like our like family and close friends were some of the first listeners.
Not my family.
Did not. Oh yeah, your family didn't. They probably still don't know about it. But they were just like, oh wow, well you guys are doing something really, really great. We're really proud of you guys. And now it's like people are listening to episodes 5, 6, 7 times, and it's just hysterical. It's just so fun.
It's very silly.
It's like that response where it's like, oh, you launched that.
Yeah,
you did that with a head pad.
Yeah. My mom just still says like the podcast. Like my mom's on the conservative side in some ways. I just would never want her listening to me making jokes about sex.
She's not your target audience.
She's not my target audience.
Yeah.
Mindy, sorry. But she's always like, the podcast. How's the project going?
The project. What did my aunt said? I don't really get it, but you sound very articulate. Isn't that what she said?
Great feedback.
I was like, wow, thanks, Aunt Linda. I appreciate it.
I don't approve of the content, but your public speaking skills are fantastic.
So great.
I'm very proud of you.
Well, Allison and Lindsay, thank you so much for taking the time. Again, if you guys want to connect with them, and you should, their Instagram is @Obedient Agency, I'm going to spell it. Obedient Agency. And their website is obedientagency.com. Thanks so much for spending today with me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. This is great.